our objectives for today are to understand reporting options, as well as evaluate your appraisal process and learn more about your assessment options. So let's take a quick peek at our agenda for today. So we're going to go through reports available in Strive, as well as building your process for TIA success. And that includes student growth measures. Then we have a great resource to share with y'all today. TEKSready. Courtney is going to be sharing with us such great knowledge about TEKSready and how it can support the great things happening in your district and save you on some time with this really robust resource. And then we're going to wrap it up with some continual data analysis. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to introduce the fabulous Paige Parker as she walks us through our next steps. Paige?
Well, thank you very much. So we're going to start with TIA reporting. I always like to quote Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. So what do we need to get out of the system? We need to get out that data that we have to turn over to report for the data submission. So we're going to start with the report that we have to offer that will allow you to get that information out, and then we'll work back to the steps that you need to have in place to make that happen. So when you go into Strive as an administrator, and you have to be a district level, you have to be the appraisal administrator. Principals at campuses cannot see this report. It's a district level report. So if you have that district appraisal administrator role, then you can go into analysis and reports. The second report in the list is going to be the TIA export. And then you have some options over on the right-hand side. You're going to select the summative document that you used for that school year because it pulls the data from the summative. And then you'll make sure that you're collecting data from the right year. So what you're submitting, what you just submitted, is your 22-23 data, not this current school year. And it's going to default to the current school year because everything in Strive does. So you'll need to make sure that you set that correctly. There's also an option up above that says you can include eligible designations. There's a little checkbox there. This is sort of like a designation predictor. If you did not use anything different in your application than what's the standards, so if you go to the performance standards for teachers and for student growth on the TIA website, and you did not change the cut points for the designations, then you can use this little calculator that we created, and it will predict what, based on those two criteria, that they had at least threes and that they met the cut points, it will predict the designations that your teachers will get. Now, just remember that that is pre-validation by Texas Tech. So this is just like an estimate of what you can expect to have happen. If you made any changes in your application to the designation levels, then you would not want to use this. You could just leave it unchecked. But you can go in and click and run that report. Like I said, it's going to pull from the summative documents, and it does include all the required fields for your data submission. So I'm going to show you an example of what it looks like. This is one that was pulled from our demo site. And all of the fields up at the top in that top column, that's what you'll see on the spreadsheet if you download it from the TIA website. These are all the fields that are required in your data submission, all the way over to the 8 dimensions that you're reporting on, and then that average observation score. So all of those fields are there. Now you'll notice I have some blanks in mine, and you might too the first time you run it have these blanks, because not all of that data inherently lives in Eduphoria, but I'm going to show you how you can get it in there so that more of this is filled out and there's less for you to have to do once you pull it from Eduphoria. You will still have to do some things because Eduphoria is not going to know if you're changing a designation. It's not going to know if they're still employed in your district by the time you come around to submission. And it's not going to know the eligible teacher group. And this is based on your application. So if you had one group, all teachers are being measured the same way, then everybody would get a 1 in this field. But if you had one group for math and one group for language arts, or one group for K through 5 and one group for 6 through 12, then you'll have different numbers based on the teacher. And there's not a way for that to be populated in. That's something you'll have to do after you get this report. The main service ID number is something else that you'll have to put in here because that varies from district to district. But what you can do is write a formula that reads the main content area and then converts that into your district's numbers. Now, it's going to be a pretty chunky formula because there's quite a few content areas. So it's going to require somebody with more spreadsheet formula skills than I have, but that can be done so that it reads from column P and translates it into your district number for column O. You'll notice in my example here, I've got some appraisers who did not fill that spot out when they did the summative document. There's a drop-down menu on the modal that opens up when you first start a document, and it asks them for the grade level and subject area. And if they left it blank, it's going to be blank on this report. So that's something, to check on throughout the year. Make sure that your principals are in the habit of doing that so that you won't have any blanks on your end of your report like I have on mine. I'm going to talk about the ID numbers in just a minute, and also the percentages of students who met or exceeded and where that can come from. But then this is going to pull, all of this is going to pull from the summative. If you plug in these numbers in the summative, and there is a place in the summative document to do that, then it will average the met and expected together and give you that number right here. And then also it will pull the summative ratings and put in those scores for the 8 dimensions that are required for TIA. Anywhere that there's a blank, it's going to be highlighted in red to make it really obvious for you. And so you would need to go in and see, okay, maybe this is a duplicate. They started one, they forgot they started one, and then they went in and did another one. We just need to delete this one out. So that'd be something for you to check on. In this case, they just left one rating blank. So I think that's probably a mistake that the appraiser needs to go back and correct. But all of that information is going to pull into the report, and then you will have some manipulation, some changes that you'll have to make after the fact. Is there any questions that we need to talk about now?
We did get one really great question in the chat. Is the TIA report available to everyone, or do districts pay extra for permissions for this?
It is there for everybody. So even our non-TIA districts, their appraisal administrator can see that report. And so you could kind of see what your data looks like. And okay, well, we've got enough people who would qualify. Maybe we do want to think about applying to be part of TIA. So that report is out there for everyone. It's only available, like I said, to those who have the role of appraisal administrator at the district level, but every district has that report. Good question.
We also have another question. So to Victoria, I do see that you, so if you don't have access right now, yes, you would need to talk to your Eduphorean at your district and to make sure your permissions are correct. And then we also have another question. Can you bring in the appraiser rater unique ID into Eduphoria? Or how about the internal ID, unique ID, and TEA ID from other systems into Eduphoria?
So somebody must have paid for that question to be answered, because it's a perfect lead into our next slide. So I'm going to click and show you how you can get all of that information into your report. It does not inherently live in Eduphoria, but you can put it there so that it will show up in the report. You can go into manage users. And again, you have to be a system manager in your district to have this access. So if you're not the system manager, and that's not the same as the appraisal administrator in Strive, this is for all of Eduphoria. But if you're the system administrator or system manager, you can go in and click on manage users and import users, and you'll get this screen, which tells you all of the fields that you can import into our system. You can download a template that will give you all of the headers that you need. And you have to have all of the headers in your spreadsheet, but you don't have to have data in every single field. You can't leave the header out, but you can leave the column blank. The columns that you must have are first name, last name, email, and school, because that's how Eduphoria knows to tie it to the existing accounts. And what you might want to consider for TIA purposes are the middle name and date of birth, which are optional in TIA, but they are in the report. So if you wanted them to be populated in the report, you can pull those in. And then also the 3 IDs that are required for TIA, the local district, the TSDS, and the TEA ID, those can all be fields that you pull in. You'll see those right here in the middle of the list. You can pull that data in as well. This information can come from your employee information system. And usually if you've got someone who manages that, if you give them this template and you tell them what fields you need out of that template to be populated, they can get it for you. And then when you come back to the screen in the lower right-hand corner, there's going to be a little button that you click on to actually upload that CSV file into Eduphoria. Then when you run the TIA report again, all of those fields are going to be populated. So I saw the chat number go up. Do we have questions I need to address
We
right now?
do. We have one member that is asking, how does this work with the automatic upload our district currently has in place?
Okay, good question. So we do have a sync with Active Directory that happens overnight for your users. There's actually 2 things happening in the background. One is a roster import that goes into Aware, and that does not affect this at all. The other is an Active Directory sync that does go into their user accounts, but it does not include all of this information. It will not have date of birth. It might have middle name, depending on how your district is set up. It might have the local ID number, again, depending on how your district has set it up, but it won't have a place for all 3 ID numbers. So even if you are using the Active Directory sync and you have the local ID number coming in, you probably want to do this import in addition to that so that you get those other 2 ID numbers and maybe the date of birth if that's something that you want to include.
I think we are all clear in the chat.
Awesome. So those were good questions, and I hope that gives you all the information that you need to take back. I do want to point out that at the bottom of each of our slides, there are links. And so there's a link down here to go to this import and walk you through that process. You guys are going to get the slides after this webinar is over. I think it's a 24-hour period before you receive the link, but you'll get a link to the recording and also this slideshow. So you'll have access to all the links that are there and the stuff that we have in our online help guide to walk you through this process. All right, so once you get that information in, you can pull the TIA report. And if you are using the 8 dimensions and it's coming from your summative, then that's all you need to do. If your district wrote in your application some additional things that you wanted to include in your calculations, then you might need to pull the document analysis report and merge some of those things in, because like I said, the TIA export only pulls from the summative document domain or dimensions 2.1 through 3.3. And if you're including anything else, I know some districts added in some domain 1 or 4 stuff, or they added in some observation calculations, which won't be part of the summative. If your district wrote those things into your application, you can get that information by pulling the document analysis report. It will pull one document at a time. So if you need observations and walkthroughs or 2 different observation templates, you'll have to pull those as separate documents because it doesn't merge all that together. It can pull any template type. So whatever you wanted to include, you can. You will need to convert the information to numeric values because it's going to show in that spreadsheet as distinguished, accomplished, proficient, developing, or improvement needed. It only takes a couple of minutes to do a find and replace and convert those to numeric values. So that's pretty easy to do. And you may need to combine multiple reports, again, if you are using multiple documents. We do have an article about this as well in our online help guide about using the document analysis report and also about converting those ratings to numeric values. So if that's something that was part of your application, we do have a way for you to get that data, and then you can do some merging to get everything together in the one report. All right. So that's the end where we get all of our data and get it ready to submit. How do we get there? How do we align the process for TIA success? So let's talk about your evaluation process. One thing that you can do as you're writing your application or updating your application is follow a pre-approved process, and there are several of them. In Eduphoria, we have all of the templates that you need to do the t-test process available in the Eduphoria community, and they're ready to use, ready to collect data for you. We have articles in our online help guide. There's one right here about designing the evaluation process that will show you how to create your steps and tasks to walk your appraisers and your teachers through everything that's going to happen in the process. And we have all the documents that you'll need to make that happen. You can use other pre-approved systems that TIA says are already validated, like Danielson, Marzano, or TAP. We do not have all of the documents for those in our community ready to use, but they can be built. So you can create any type of template that you want to follow one of those pre-approved processes and not have that be part of your application. Or you can create your own system as a district. You just have to make sure you get it approved for TIA as a validated and approved evaluation process. But whatever method you decide, you can create it in Strive, and it's completely customizable. We just have all the templates ready for t-test because that's where the majority of Texas districts have landed on their evaluation processes. But you can build anything that you need, make a custom template for any other process. We would just recommend do one that's pre-approved so that you don't have to worry about that part of the process. Once you have your process built, there's another question to consider: to score or not to score. Scores, per se, are not needed for reporting. You need a numeric value, but it does not ask you for any scores. It doesn't ask you to average anything. It just asks you to give a numeric value for each one of those dimensions. So you don't necessarily have to score a document. I want to talk about pros and cons or considerations that you might want to think about when you're deciding whether you want to score or not. We do have scoring as an option, and we have a link here about setting up a template for scoring. But let's talk about some of the considerations. If you just need your numeric values, our analysis, the detailed analysis, will give you those numeric values without scoring the documents at all. And the TIA report automatically converts them to numeric values for you. So you don't have to create a score on a template in order to get those numeric values if reporting is what you're looking for. When you do turn on scoring, the teachers are going to see a number on the document. They're going to see either a dimension or a domain score and possibly an overall average, depending on how you set your scoring up. You'll notice in the box toward the bottom there are two different levels of scoring. The first one is for each group, and the second one is for the entire evaluation. In Strive, a group equals a matrix question. So it does not necessarily equal a domain. If you set your template up to have all of the domain one dimensions in a single matrix question, then that would be a group. But if, and a lot of the templates are one dimension per matrix question, then each dimension would be a group. So you have to think about what are the group averages going to be, because they're based on the matrix question, not necessarily the domain. And then in addition to that, if you choose to average the entire evaluation, it's either going to average the score for each group or the total of each item, but it can't do an average for just domains 2 and 3. It doesn't know what domains 2 and 3 are, so it's going to do all of the matrix questions or all of the groups and not just domains 2 and 3. There's not a way to get that. So it might be a misleading score if you give an average for the whole document to the teachers and they can see it, because only 2 and 3 count toward TIA, they're going to see an average that includes all 4 domains. So those are just things to think about when you decide whether you want to score for your documents. And then if you need more information about setting up the scoring, there is a link that's going to be on this slide when you get the slides. All right, another thing to consider is that student growth measurement. How are you measuring student growth? How are teachers going to track student growth? And there are several options in Strive. One of the things that you can use is student growth goals and student portfolios to measure and track student growth. And this is something that the teachers can set up. It connects Aware and Strive together because the students' information and their scores, their assessment data all lives in Aware, but the student growth goals that teachers are writing lives in Strive. So the two applications will be connected for this piece. Teachers can add students from their rosters, or they can add them from student access groups, which used to be called monitor lists, but now they're called student access groups. That's a group of students that are not rostered to me, but I am monitoring in some way. So if I'm an instructional coach or a case manager and I have students that I have written a goal for, but they're not on my roster, I don't have a roster maybe, I can create a student access group and still use this function because I can create a portfolio for that group. You'll notice on the left-hand side, that sort of left column, once they start to create the student portfolio, they'll click on either the pencil or the button that says Add Students, and they'll get this little pop-up window that shows me all my class periods. I can expand or contract my class periods, and I can see all my individual students and their demographic information. I can click on the box beside a class period title to select every student in that class period, which is probably what elementary teachers are going to do. Or I could select individual students from each of my class periods based on the demographic information so that I get a good representation of my campus. Because the master schedule does not always separate kids out with a good demographic mix across the board. So I might want to pull some students from other class periods to make it a better representative sample. Either way, I can select my students and they'll be added in on the left-hand side in a student list that I'll use for this portfolio. And then I can go up to the plus sign that you'll see kind of in the middle at the top, where I will choose either a rubric-based milestone or an assessment-based milestone. So these portfolios can be created with any student group, any kind of data that you have, and then you can use that as your intervention plan, enrichment, monitoring student progress, or getting those final averages for the TIA student progress. Once the portfolio has been set up, I'm going to go in and add those milestones. And we have two different kinds. We call them rubric-based or assessment-based. A rubric-based milestone is going to be where I give it a name and I create my own criteria for how I'm going to rate those students. The example that I'm showing here is following the state's SLO model. So it has an initial skill profile and a target skill profile. When I'm rating my students, I see my students over in the left-hand side. I'm going to have some pieces of evidence. In this case, I have one writing sample that has been scored here. And so I have some data that I can include when I'm trying to determine that initial skill profile. I might have some other things. I can have multiple items and scroll back and forth. You'll notice there's a scroll bar down at the bottom so that I can look at the data that I've brought in before I make my initial skill profile rating. Or I might have some writing samples in my hand. I might have some essays that the kids have written that I'm looking at while I'm doing this. But I can look at the information I have about the student. I can look at how I wrote my descriptors over here on the right. Based on what I'm seeing, this student falls into the typical range, and so I would click and rate them as typical. Beside each of the ratings, there is a comment box where teachers can go in and add either what was the reason why they landed at that particular rating, or what is the goal for that teacher, for that student, or whatever information they want to include. You have 1,000 characters that you can put in that little comment box. And then at the end of the year, I would come back and do my target skill profile the same way. I would probably have some other pieces of evidence in between those 2 points, but I would be able to go in and do my end of the year ratings. This method, the rubric-based, can be used for any rubric. It's great for the SLO model, but you can also create a rubric that doesn't use that particular model, and maybe instead of initial skill profile and target skill profile, your indicators are beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, and your levels are approaches, meets, and masters. You can create whatever kind of rubric you want. Your levels could be level 1, level 2, level 3. It's entirely up to you. It doesn't have to be the SLO model, but that is a rubric-based model, so it is perfect for that. And one of the great things about rubric-based milestones is that they allow for measurement from multiple sources over time, rather than just picking the 2 data points, pre and post, as the sole measurement. So that's one option that you have for creating your milestones, is to use a rubric of some sort. The other is to use an assessment-based milestone. Now, you'll notice in the example that I had before, I did have some assessment data in there, so there can be a combination of the 2 different kinds of milestones. But some districts may have a portfolio that is only assessment-based. And in this example, I have a beginning of the year test and I have an end of the year test, and I'm viewing the raw scores. So when I go in and create that milestone, it's going to give me a list of all the assessments that I have in Aware. It can be imported data from MAP or Telepass or anything else that I've imported in STAR. It can also be district assessments, campus assessments, even teacher tests. And then once I choose the test that I want, then it will ask me how I want it to display. So do I want to see it in a raw score, percentage score, performance level? If you've entered those in Aware, you can display it by performance level. And in this, so pre and post test for this particular rubric. After the pre and post tests have been entered in, or the rubrics have been rated, at the end of the year, the teacher is going to go in and read that data and say, this student met expected growth or exceeded expected growth. So they're going to give that final rating, and this is what's going to pull into the summative and then pull into the TIA report. It's from this student growth column over here on the right. So Allison just let me know my mic cut out for a second, and I apologize for that. If there are any questions or anything that you missed, please throw that in the chat and let us know what I need to repeat, or if there's any clarification needed there. And if not, again, there's a link there to student portfolio section. You'll get that when you get the slideshow. But to talk about that pre and post test option, we have an additional resource, and Courtney is going to talk about that. So I'm going to turn it over to Courtney.
Yeah, thank you, Paige. And I do want to apologize for my voice. I've caught a cold or something. So hopefully everyone can bear with me for the next couple of minutes. But Paige has just done such a wonderful job of walking everyone through what is a really complicated process with TIA. Strive and Aware does a great job of making the process more manageable for districts. But we know that there was one pain point that our Region 10 districts, but really I was hearing from all over the state, was where do we find resources for non-tested subject areas? I teach CTE. I teach anatomy and physiology, but we want to do TIA for our 7th grade social studies teachers, and I don't have the capacity or the knowledge base to write an assessment for every single one of those courses. And so the Region 10 Data Solutions team, my team here at Region 10, has stepped up and said, we can help with that. There is no reason for you guys to be all out there making pre and post tests and working so hard and doing duplicate work. So we worked with Eduphoria to create TEKSready, and we're so excited to be able to bring this to you. So TEKSready is a perfect solution for those beginning of year and end of year assessments for TIA, but that's not all you can use it for. We know that formative assessment or student monitoring, progress monitoring is an essential part of TIL and the effective schools frameworks, and that there's just districts out there who are looking for additional items for their district assessments, who are looking for courses out there that haven't traditionally been available in item banks inside of Eduphoria. So we're really excited about TEKSready. When you get these slides, you can request a free trial through January via the link here, and visit our website at teksready.com. Let's talk a little bit more about what's included with it. So this just launched in the last few weeks. So what you have access to right now, if you get your trial turned on, are 17 beginning of year assessments for those non-traditionally tested subject areas. So you can see the list here. This is just where we started. And we will have an additional 40 courses, including some CTE courses, coming by the time you're ready to do your end of year assessments for spring of 2024. And, then of course you'll have access to those for the, for in perpetuity. But these will be pre-built for you if you could go in and just clone them as is in Eduphoria. So that's a really great couple of click process. Or you can go in and use the items to build your own assessments and kind of modify them that way. We also have included here a link to the blueprints. So you'll be able to see exactly the depth of knowledge included on these assessments, the tech enhanced items, which ones and how many and which standards are included. So you'll get a little more detail if you click that TEKSready blueprint link as well. So if you need more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to us or throw your questions in the Q&A or the chat. But really, TEKSready and Eduphoria make TIA, like, I know this is an oversimplification, so forgive me, but as easy as 1, 2, 3. I know it's not really that easy. You guys have so much hard work going on in the background with all the reporting. But for your teachers and your principals, it becomes create your student portfolio like Paige just showed, import those assessment scores. You don't have to, worry so much about hiring teachers or hiring curriculum writers and building all those individual assessments. You just clone those right on over from TEKSready, pull them into your portfolio, and then your teachers assign that growth measure. And so hopefully this will be relieve one of those pain points and give you the time and energy back to focus on the reporting and all that background hard work that you guys are working on, and not have to worry so much about the content. So don't hesitate to throw in those questions in the chat or the Q&A. My team is here and ready to answer those, or you can reach out to us directly.
Thank you so much, Courtney.
Yeah.
This is a great resource, and we're excited to see districts start using it in Eduphoria. So hooray.
On the page, we have, it looks like some, our Region 10 partners are answering questions in the chat regarding TEKSready.
Yeah.
But we do have a question. Does TEKSready also have an EOI administration?
Yes. So every course that we add assessments for will have a BOI and an EOI. Right now, just the BOIs are in there, but you will get access to those EOIs hopefully pretty quickly, but for sure by springtime when you're ready to work on administering those.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Great. All right. So our final section is about throughout the process. So we kind of started at the beginning, at the end with getting the data out. And then we went back to the beginning about setting up the process and going through all those steps. And then this is going to be the middle part. What are you going to do? How are you going to look at your data and make sure that things are going the way you want them to be going throughout the year? And how are you going to know how to monitor and how to adjust? So we're going to look at some of the data options that you have. First of all, you need to know if you're calibrated. And that's one of the things TIA is looking for, to make sure that the data is valid, because all of the appraisers are calibrated and all of the documents are calibrated. And there's lots of different ways that you can look at calibration. So this is the detailed analysis feature in Strive. when you go in as an administrator or as a campus appraiser, because principals can use the detailed analysis. They will not see the whole district. They will only see their campus, but they can see how their appraisers are calibrated with one another and some of these other selections that we'll talk about. But anybody can go into detailed analysis, and then it's all about these filters up here at the top. So all of these boxes, you're going to make your selections to get the data that you want. In this case, I'm looking at, are we calibrated between campuses? So if you look at the rows field in that top row, I've selected schools for my rows, and then I see my school names down here on the left, and then the averages for each school. So I can see the number of documents that have been done at each school, and then I can look at what the averages are from all of those documents. And right now I'm looking at observations. So that's where I can tell what data I'm looking at. I'm looking at t-test observations for this current school year, and I have them displayed by dimensions, and I have them filtered down by domains so that I'm just seeing dimensions 2.1 through 3.3. So you can use all of these boxes at the top to get down to the data that you want. I'm looking at averages, and I'm looking at, are we kind of in line? Do I see any outliers? Do I see anybody who's significantly higher or significantly lower? And I do see that with Alaska Elementary, but this is one document. So that may not be a really good comparison because it's only one person being observed compared to 30 people averaged together for this other elementary. So you kind of have to look at all of the pieces of information to see, what is it that this data is telling me. If you need to look at the data in a spreadsheet and maybe do some more, maybe some charts and graphs, maybe some manipulation in other ways, you can click on this download button in the right-hand corner here, and it will download the spreadsheet of what you're seeing on the screen. So it's going to download the filtered data. I will only see the 8 dimensions. I will only see schools. They'll be listed by schools. I'll see observations. So whatever I'm viewing here, when I click this button, that's what it will download into a spreadsheet for me. At the bottom of all of the next few slides is going to be the same link to detailed analysis that will walk you through all the different ways that you can change this up. But I just wanted to show you some examples of things that you can get in terms of looking at your data. So this was between campuses, and that's a district level thing to look at. Both districts and campuses might want to look at calibration between appraisers. So are we all implementing the rubric the same way? Are we interpreting it and applying it the same way in all of our evaluations? So to look at the calibration by appraisers, I'm going to select appraisers in my rows, and I'll see appraiser names over here on the left-hand side. I can also filter down by schools. So maybe I just want to look at a feeder pattern. I want to pull just the schools in that feeder pattern. Or maybe I want to look at just, are we calibrated between all of my middle school principals? So I want to select just the middle schools. You can filter down by anything that you want. Right now I'm filtered down to 5 campuses and my 2 domains, domains 2 and 3. And I'm looking at each of my individual principals to see, again, are we relatively in line, or is there someone who is significantly higher or lower with their averages than all of the others? Sometimes there's a valid reason for that. They may have gotten all the veteran teachers while someone else got all the brand new teachers, and that may make a difference between their overall ratings. But I want to see what the data tells me and then investigate the things that stand out to me as possibly being things to worry about. I can also look at the data between subjects. So again, I've changed my rows up here to subjects. What I'm seeing in the left-hand side are my subjects. I could narrow this down to a specific set. Again, I could look at just my elementary schools or just my secondary schools, but I'm going to try to find some things that stand out. One thing that stands out to me here is that I have 3 documents that are not set to any specific subject area. So that data may belong in one of these other rows, but I can't tell. So I would want to go back and find these documents. I could drill down and click on that and find out what are these evaluations, and then go back to that appraiser and get them to correct that so that these will get moved into one of the subject areas. But that's one of the things that you can kind of catch as you're going through the year if you look at this data periodically. And then the other thing that I noticed for this one is that reading has lower scores than any of my other subject areas. So there's only 2 documents, but still the average is lower than any of my other subject areas. And there may be a valid reason for that, and there may not be. So I might want to look at who's doing the evaluations for that subject area. Do we need to do a little calibration to make sure we're all in line, or is there some other information that kind of explains it? I can also do calibration between grade levels. So I can sort at the grade level. And again, I have one that's not set. So I'd want to go find that one evaluation and get that appraiser to go in and make that correction so that they fall into the correct grade level. This is going to be more effective at elementary than it is at any of the secondaries, because at secondary, you start getting mixed grade level groups. And so it's more difficult to compare because the evaluation might have been in algebra that which had some 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders in there. And you can't, by looking at 12th grade, you really can't tell what subject you're seeing or how that's going to help you. So this is really probably more user friendly for elementary. But again, I want to see, is there a grade level that's significantly higher or lower? And are there any that are not set, not labeled? And then we've been looking at data in what we call the table view, where you see rows and columns, but I can also change the view. Up at the top, one of my settings up here is a view. And if I change it from table to graph, it's going to show me in this graphic format. I'm going to see the color-coded information. It's the same data in the table or the graph. It's just a different presentation of that data. In this example, I'm actually viewing it by dimension. So I changed my rows to dimensions. This is my whole district. I'm looking at dimensions 2.1 through 3.3, and I'm seeing overall as a district, what are our ratings for that particular dimension? What are our highest rated dimensions? What are our lowest rated dimensions? Are there any areas of concern for me? I could narrow that down to a specific school or group of schools if I wanted to, but this is just another way of viewing that data. And then we also have that all the previous slides were from our detailed analysis section. We also have an option called document summary, which is great for walkthrough analysis. It's also great if you have a template that is not matrix questions. If you have checkbox questions in a walkthrough document, those won't work in detailed analysis. Detailed analysis has to be matrix-based questions. So the document summary would be the solution for you to go in and see each of the dimensions, and whatever I checked off in those checkboxes, this is how it would display. You'll notice this top one has percentages and the others don't. When you're looking at document summary, you can float your mouse over any one of those bars and it will give you the actual number of documents and also the percentage. But with document summary and with checkbox questions, you can be a little more granular. You can have checkboxes for individual look-fors for the dimensions and not just an overall dimension rating. These are the kinds of templates that are going to give really good instructional feedback to your teachers, but you still want to be able to see, what are my trends? What are my highs and lows? And the document summary will allow you to do that. Do we have questions in the chat that I need to address?
No, chat is really quiet right now. We're going to go ahead and do a final last call for questions in the chat. As we are reaching the close of our presentation, you have those final questions, or maybe they're going to come to you later on, whenever the day slows just a little bit. You can always reach out to us at training@eduphoria.net. We're happy to get back to you on answering those questions and getting you the support you need. Also, I just want to throw out a few little extra nuggets for today. This presentation is going to be sent to y'all for those of you registered for the webinar. And it's going to have tons of goodies stuffed in it, if you will. So one thing I want to draw your attention to on the next slide is going to be our asynchronous learning courses, for our teacher learning courses. We have those for both Aware and Strive. So if you are looking for a solution to really supporting your educators in your district that will help them and as they navigate Aware and Strive, and really use those tools to maximize their efforts in the classroom, those teacher learning courses definitely provide that kind of support. So bookmark those whenever you get this link within the presentation.
And I also just want to throw out there that if you decide to do the student portfolios, there is a video in that teacher learning course that walks the teachers through what they have to do. So when you've created the process and they have to go and build the portfolios, you have that resource to help them.
Perfect. And also, speaking of other ways to support, we do offer training tailored for your team. We have 3 methods of delivery, on site, online, or on demand. And again, if you reach out to us, training@eduphoria.net, we can get you in touch with whichever team you would like to schedule with. Also, loop your account manager in. Paige and I are over Strive, and we have 2 teammates that are over Aware to support you. Paige and I also support Forethought and the other apps. And so we would love to talk to you about how to meet your needs and really get you some training solutions put together. And it looks like the chat is pretty quiet. So again, if y'all need anything, if you have questions following today's webinar, please reach out to us, training@eduphoria.net. I'm going to put that in the chat really quick. And we thank you guys so much for joining us today. It's so brave. Everyone is so brave the day after Halloween. I know the sugar rush is a real struggle today on campuses. So thank y'all so much for taking this time to be with us today. And we hope your November is absolutely fantastic.